Hey, welcome to Mike the Baptist. I'm Mike the Baptist. And look who's back. H.D. Jones.
Hey, good to be back.
Nice to see you and hear you, for those of you who are listening.
Yeah.
Both. Good to see you and hear you. Look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Are you sure?
No, but it's going to be good. It'll be fun.
Yes.
And Susan Jones is back.
Ta-da!
Good to see you back, Susan.
Thank you.
The husband and wife team across the table has been interesting, I think. It's kind of a little different dynamic.
Sure.
I mean, all of you are crazy people like the rest of us.
Absolutely.
That part's not different, but the dynamic is a little different.
I have to behave a little more.
You are a little more behaved, but not much. I'm just going to say not much. But anyway, glad to have both of you back. Looking forward to having a good visit with you. And anyway, yeah, do what we normally do here. www.mikethebaptist.com. Go on there and buy you something and look around and look for old episodes and stuff. And send us an email. Comments at mikethebaptist.com. That email can be about anything. Okay, that's all I have to say there. It can be about anything. But we did actually get an Inny or Outty question from a watcher listener this week, and we're going to be using that today. So look forward to that.
Which means you've read it, so you know the answer.
I do, but I'm going to be the asker.
I know.
So
that's an advantage to the host.
Yes, but one person has to ask who knows the answer. Now you're confusing me.
Right.
Today on the front porch, you know what would be fun to talk about, maybe.
Okay.
Or interesting. Or if it's not interesting, fake it and try to make it interesting. But, you know, we've all been to vacation Bible school when we were kids and adults. Mm-hmm. You know, my church is big on adults coming too. They got classes for them. They're gluing things to paper plates too in the big classes. But anyway, I thought it'd be neat to kind of visit some of those old memories and see what came of it. We'll find out what H.D. burned at his church when he was little. Things like that. So,
Always something.
Susan, you want to start us? Tell us what. Sure. Tell us some VBS stories.
Sure. Well, most of my fun stories are from when I've been an adult going to VBS. I grew up going to Vacation Bible School at my home church when I was a child. It was the typical felt board stories and the Kool-Aid and the Oreos and all that good stuff, making fun crafts, and always had a good time. But as an adult, I've actually directed VBS for, I don't know, I probably directed 23 years, something like that, a long time. So when you're directing, you have a lot of behind-the-scenes things that happen. So one thing that we actually were talking about recently that I had kind of forgotten about, at one of the churches where we used to be and did VBS, there's a parade around July 4th, which we just had yesterday. And we would make a float to go in that parade for that little city to promote our church's Vacation Bible School, because it would be the week following that. And so HD would always go get the trailer at his family's farm, and we would bring it up there and decorate it. So this particular year we had made this big, it was an Amazon Outfitters, I think's what it was. Mm-hmm. It was an Amazon theme. So we had all these vines on there. We would go all out. Had a whole team would come up for, a week beforehand just working on the float, much less the stuff for the actual VBS. And so we had, luckily we had not loaded the trailer with people at this point, but he was transporting the trailer by the tractor, I think is what he was pulling it from where our church was, probably about 5 miles up the road to where the parade route was going to be. But we did have a couple guys back there on the trailer while we were transporting it. So they're transporting it down this little back curvy road, and apparently someone did not put the pin in correctly.
In the trailer hitch?
In the trailer hitch. And so next thing you knew, the trailer with all the decorations on it is letting go of the tractor and rolling backwards down the road and goes into a ditch with these guys on it. But luckily nobody was hurt and they were able to hook it back up. I wasn't on the trailer, so I guess y'all hooked it back up and then brought it on. We went on to the parade.
Yep,
Everybody met up at the parade site and loaded on it, and everything worked out fine.
It didn't tear all the stuff up.
It didn't. I don't know how, but it didn't tear up the float or anything, but that was kind of scary. And then another behind the scenes that happened when we were directing VBS, actually at our current church now. So my kids usually were up there with me because they were all small while I was doing all this stuff. And so Micah, one year I was downstairs. I remember being in the basement and I was cutting up all this paper and doing all these things to make crafts and decorations. And it was just, I think it was just Micah and I up there that day. And so he was helping me. And so I had asked him to go get something or whatever. And he found a pair of scissors. So he comes running up the hallway with this pair of scissors, holding it up with the point up, and they're open. He's got both, handle in each hand. He's probably about 3, and he's running up, Mommy, I got your scissors. And as a mom, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of panicked because if he falls, this is going to go in his head or throat or something. But I don't want to freak him out, so I'm like, oh, okay, bud, just slow down, come real carefully, hand those to Mom. And so he did, and he came, and he just, he was carefully handing them to me. Well, I mistakenly, but it's because I was kind of panicked, reached out to grab them with my open hand and reached out like this, and my finger was right between the 2 blades, and he took the ends as I grabbed it and went whoosh, and closed them and cut the pad off of my index finger. So I knew his daddy was upstairs working. And I was about to pass out. And so I took it and, put pressure on it and bent over. And I said, baby, I need you to go find your daddy. And I need you to bring him down here to Mama. And he takes off. He comes down. I'm like, hey, come off finger. So, but again, lived through it. It healed. And
this was Micah, the youngest.
This was Micah. This was our baby. Yeah. So it was a day or two ago.
That's why we don't have any more children.
Yeah, he definitely was the caboose.
He stopped the streak, eh?
Yeah.
He definitely stopped the train.
3's enough.
I think I understand. Susan's coming back. Both of y'all are coming back again next week.
Yep.
And I think if I understand right, we may have another Micah story next week.
Oh, yeah, there's lots of stories with Micah.
Looking forward to that.
But VBS is always great, so we're looking forward to that next week at our home church, and we've already got it all decorated. I think everybody's, nobody's been maimed this year. Nobody's gotten hurt falling off a ladder.
That's good.
Yeah, so it'll be a great week. We always love Vacation Bible School, and it has a special place in our children's lives and our life as far as our ministry. And so I just encourage everybody, if you have a Vacation Bible School near you, go and check it out. It's not stuffy. Like you said, it's a lot of just regular people hanging out and having fun that love Jesus and want to talk to you about it. It's a lot of fun.
It's a good vibe.
Yes, it's a great week.
When a church is having a Vacation Bible School, because everybody's kind of, you're around everybody for a whole week.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just naturally kind of get a little closer to people, I guess, when you do that. And everybody's in a good mood.
Right. It's kind of like going to camp, but you get to sleep at home in your own bed.
That's right. You get to go home.
And the air conditioning.
Remind me, Susan, when it's my turn that to include you in a VBS story.
Okay.
I just thought of one that you're actually involved in.
All right.
Hey, Steve.
So again, VBS has always been a big part of our lives, and when as a kid, but we used to always go in the middle of the day, and had some fun times there. But when as a young adults, we got really involved in VBS. We've had some interesting stories. Mm-hmm. This one happened at Temple. We had a kid one night who started kind of having a panic attack and took off running from the campus, like left campus, took off running, and he was a visitor. And so one of our young men literally chased this boy down to 31W and body slammed him, tackled him in the grass till the police could get there, and that was pretty fun. But
fun, yeah. That's
one of my favorite ones was I was doing adult VBS. This was before I was even a pastor. I was doing adult VBS at our church, and a couple other churches in our association was like, "Hey, would you consider coming to my church and doing some adult VBS?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I go to this church, and I'm trying to, make adult VBS fun for these guys. And so I go in this one group, and we were talking about Ruth and Boaz that year. And, I know none of these people, know none of their stories, and I'm just being goofball me. And I'm like, so, Ruth, she was married, and, her husband died. And I said, you know why her husband died? And they're all looking at me. I said, because he wanted to, da-da-da. And I said, and then Ruth, it wasn't like she could go down to the senior center down here and go to the dance and find her another husband. She had to wait for Boaz and all this stuff. Well, in the intermission, when I got done, this other little lady comes up. She just smiling. She says, I'm really enjoying what you're doing, but you didn't know that. But Hazel over there, her husband, he just died a couple of weeks ago, and she's been down to the senior center looking. I was like, okay, so that was strike one. So then I decided, okay, I'm gonna take all these folks, and we're gonna go out and we're gonna do some kind of game. I'm gonna get there, just let them be a kid again, right? So we go out, and I get them all in a circle, and again, I know none of them, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna play this game, and it kind of goes like, never have I ever, and somebody says something like, never have I ever been to Disney World. And if you've been to Disney World, then you've got to stand up. And then we find out who's left in the crowd and blah, blah, blah. So they know each other. I don't have a clue. They know each other, and they're starting to poignantly ask questions. So this one old boy goes, I have never, ever smoked a cigarette. Well, this group stands up. I have never, ever gotten drunk. Well, it starts narrowing it down. And this old girl looks up and she goes, if he says anything about getting a boob job, I'm out of here. And I realized in that moment I have lost control of this crowd.
And this was VBS.
This was VBS. See, so you just never know what can happen in church.
And that's the danger of having adult classes.
It is.
It is.
VBS.
Yeah.
Unless you keep control.
Well, you just never know. But that's fun.
He's not always good at keeping control.
No. And I just laughed and decided, let's wrap this game up.
I think things like that kind of follow you around, though, a little bit.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. It's okay. It's all good.
So you had a story about my wife?
No, not exactly. But
okay.
I was talking in the green room before we started about this subject, and I don't really have any funny stories about VBS. I do have a lot of fond memories of as a kid, gluing macaroni noodles to paper plates.
Oh, yeah.
And then painting them or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And did you glue them to popsicle sticks too?
I
You made these crosses and things
Yes.
with popsicle
Okay.
sticks, and then
Yep.
some of them I
true.
think you glued the macaroni to those.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Not sure what
They
the
were delicious.
spiritual connection was with the macaroni on the cross.
Macaroni was cheap.
But
Cheap craft supplies.
anyway, no, what I was thinking of is one year at my church here in town, Susan was the director. And I come bebopping in one day. I think I was running the soundboard that year.
It's all coming back to me.
Yeah, so I came bebopping in there early. I like to go there early, and they were all up there still getting everything ready. Well, I like to go in there and put a little music on to listen to. Kind of low music to listen to as the crowd was coming in and getting ready. And like my fingers and my hands they work like this with a radio or anything that has to do with music. I go to turn dials and they all go to the 70s. My hands will not go to anything else. So I called up some 70s music. It was an airplane theme that year.
Yep.
So I thought, you know what would be perfect? Steve Miller Band, Jet Airliner. So I turned Jet Airliner on, and I eased the volume up. I'm back there doing my things, and I look up, and Susan is way up at the front of the church, and she's standing straight up, like on Hee Haw, when they stood up in the cornfield. It was like she was standing straight up, looking back at me, and she was giving me this slice across the neck thing, like this. And I'm looking at her, and I'm just waving and grinning. And I'm cranking the music up, Jet Airliner. What she knew was coming, I had not thought about, but there's a bad word coming up in there. And as I was grinning and waving back at her, it hit. And I went to fumbling. I think you were mad. I think you pretended you weren't, but I think you were. And anyway, that's what I just had thought about a little bit ago.
Yep.
It was a
See, here we are. We got a whole podcast about Christians trying not to cuss.
yes.
And you take it into the church, teaching them how to.
I took it right in there.
Yeah.
Throw in the
Yes,
music. Yep.
I did. So, but anyway,
Yeah.
I never did that again.
No. Mm-mm.
That's the danger too of not considering the lyrics, the music you listened to when you were young.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when you get older and you go back, you realize,
Yes.
Okay, so nice little romp down memory lane there.
Yes.
As Susan said, if you have a local church that's having a vacation Bible school, go hang around. You probably have a little bit of fun seeing everybody and good things happen. Years down the road, you hear all these stories about people that something triggered in their head at a VBS. And it may not happen right then and there, so you don't need to get all excited that things don't happen there because you plant that stuff in kids' heads.
Right.
Somewhere down the road, it comes back up.
Sure.
So it's a good thing.
Definitely.
Good visit. We'll take a break, come back and talk about some stuff we found in the Bible.
You'll never hear us say at Mike the Baptist that you need our logo t-shirts or hoodies. Just like you wouldn't hear us say that you need Barry White music. But now that Mike the Baptist has logo coffee mugs, We are a little tempted to point out that coffee would only have to taste better out of something that special, or a good hot cocoa, or a rich, smooth cappuccino in one of those brand new 11 or 15-ounce coffee mugs with that warm and inviting Mike the Baptist logo with the fake neon lettering. No, we'll never tell you that you need stuff, but we might remind you that it's not a sin to buy stuff like that, and that a little of the money you spend goes toward keeping Mike the Baptist on the air and in your head like a good Barry White album turned up to 7 while you do your taxes or trim those hedges. Find out more about the new logo coffee mugs and our t-shirts and hoodies with funny little sayings and our logo at www.mikethebaptist.com/merchandise.
Hey, we're back. Bible, as always, fascinating book. Either of y'all have anything to add to that?
Just had somebody ask me this week, is it okay if I don't believe everything in there, or if I struggle with some of the stuff in there? And I said, well, we really need to take it as complete truth and all truth. But God's okay with your questions. He really is. And it's going to take a lifetime and an eternity to figure out all the things that we don't know. So just because you don't know something or don't understand something or don't even agree with something, don't put it away.
Yeah. And, I think that's important because I think one of the parts of the Bible that a lot of people struggle with reading is the Old Testament.
Yep.
Because there's so many stories and so many unusual things that are recorded in there that, the donkey's talking, and just there's all kinds of things that a lot of times we even skip over if we're not reading it ourselves privately. But I still feel like it's important to read the Old Testament. I think it's, it enriches. I think we, as Christians, we think about it all being focused on Christ, and it is. But you don't just read the New Testament, which is more based on when he was here on earth in flesh. We need to kind of know the backstory to all of it too.
Which is what the Old Testament is.
Right. Why do you think it's still important to study the Old Testament? Or is it? Do you think it's not?
Oh, I think it's vital. Again, a lot of times we struggle with the Old Testament because there's places we've never been, names we have a hard time pronouncing, and even some of their cultural practices that seem archaic to us or we don't understand. But there's so much in there. I don't know why, but I thought about this the other day. I was thinking about people say, I don't have to read the Old Testament. What would you say if somebody said, well, I don't have to date and get engaged before I get married? Well, part of the Old Testament is that build up to the relationship that we have with now Christ in the flesh. So I think it's hugely important. And the depth of it, the more you go back and understand that God had a plan from day one, and he's been working this plan, it really helps you to understand how much God loves us.
I was just thinking, this is a 4th of July weekend. This is Independence Day weekend, and I was thinking it's kind of similar in a way to what if you didn't know why you had an Independence Day?
Right.
You'd just be celebrating. But if you know the backstory about why, which is American history, then you have a different appreciation, and you actually you're involved in the celebration in a different way because you're appreciating it. Not exactly that way, but it's kind of like that because the Old Testament's a lot of the history and how you got to.
Well, and there's so much from the Old Testament that if you understand it, even though a lot of it is difficult to decipher, so much of it, if you understand it, it all points to Christ as well. So it's important to understand, kind of like what you were saying about dating somebody. You don't just jump out and marry somebody without dating them and getting to know them. But even beyond that, getting to know their family. Because your family, good, bad, and different, makes up some of your story and who you are as a person. So you kind of need to know somebody you're considering to marry. You need to know what their backstory is and what led them to be who you know them to be today. And I think that's kind of what the Old Testament does. It just gives you a lot of insight into even all the prophecies about Christ coming, about him being born in Bethlehem, about him being crucified. It's just, I think it also, if you read the Old Testament and the New, it gives validity to what's in the New Testament, because you see all the things that were prophesied, told were going to happen hundreds of years before.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you, it has to be true, because how would they know all the details of Christ's crucifixion? How would
Right.
all those details be in there hundreds of years before it even happened if it weren't true? And it all came from God.
The whole book is fascinating.
It is.
And it's
It is.
it's all relative.
Yeah.
Plus, the Old Testament makes you thankful that you don't have to kill a goat a day or something,
Oh, my.
nowadays, and do all that.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
H is very thankful because he would be the
yeah,
goat killer.
yeah, I definitely would.
Yeah.
But you stop and think about what that entailed. I mean, you had daily sacrifices sometimes that you had to make, but you also had these appointed times. So, for example, Passover. So a family would have to pick their best lamb, protect that lamb, and raise that lamb up for the purpose of killing it. Then you got to pack it up and take it with you to Bethlehem or to Jerusalem, and then you got to actually perform the sacrifice yourself. That's not something that you just handed off to the priest. Passover was about the family spilling the blood. Then you gave the blood to the priest, and he did his part with that. But you start magnifying that on not only just a personal level. It'd be like us taking our pet. Take your favorite dog and raise him up for a few months and then take him out and sacrifice him. But you start adding that all together with the number of thousands of people that were coming together to do that, and what Jerusalem must have smelt like, looked like, heard, what the sounds that you would have heard. And golly, it's kind of sickening in a way. I don't know if any of y'all have ever been to a slaughterhouse or been to a place where they cut up meat.
Yeah.
And even in our modern day, when it's very cold in there, it still has a smell to it.
It's got its own unique smell.
It's got a smell to it and stuff. And so, you have all of this ugliness. And what that points to is how bad our sin really is. That Christ would die once for all of mankind, that he is the ultimate sacrifice, but how bad our sin really is. I don't know about y'all. Yeah, I'm glad we don't have to do that stuff anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. And I am very glad that we don't have to do any of it anymore. But I do think, like you said, part of what we lose because we don't have to come face to face with the penalty, the consequence, the retribution needed for our sin, a lot of times we don't recognize the depth of our sin. We wash over it way too quickly without really having to go. Like if you said a cuss word or whatever and you sinned, and then oh great, now I've got to go get
do all that
Bessie
stuff.
and I gotta go take her. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot more consequence. Which again, I'm thankful we don't have to, because I had to have difficulty with all those things. But but I think it also probably made you much more conscious of the ugliness, like you said, the ugliness of your sin.
There's lots of stuff in it.
Yeah.
As a great theologian said one time, true dat.
Right. 100%.
Speaking of the Bible, what have we found in there this week to talk about?
Well, we've talked about Paul in his book to the Galatian church is talking about this idea. Why would you ever go back to all this legalism? Why would you go back to just keeping the law or trying to keep the law as opposed to living by grace and the freedom that God gives to us? And he's kind of perplexed, and he's a little bit upset with them that they would go back, because he's like, the law has its purpose, and it did. God was showing and revealing to man how bad their sin was, the penalty for sin and all that. But then Christ has come and redeemed us from all that stuff, and he's like, why do you keep going back to that? And there's a part of us in there, there's a part of us that seems to want to go back to stuff. Even if it wasn't the best things for us, we want to go back to it. I don't know why that is, but seems like what we do.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the human nature thing that, you don't have to read about that in the Bible, about human nature. You know it.
Right.
You know yourself. You have this certain nature about you that you gravitate. If you let yourself, you gravitate toward things you know you probably shouldn't gravitate toward. It's human nature.
One of the big things that Paul talks about is in this grace that God gives to us, this idea of being adopted as children of God. And I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on that. What does it mean that we are adopted into the body of Christ?
Well, I know one thing that probably I learned from you when you were teaching one time, that with adoption, even going back to the Old Testament, if you had a naturally born child and they did something against your family or whatever, you could actually kick them out of the family. You could disown them, per se. But if you adopted a child, that wasn't an option, which was always interesting to me, that I can have a physically, genetically child of my own flesh, and I can disown them, which I would never want to do that, but I could have. But if I adopt them,
You couldn't.
you can't.
That is kind of interesting.
And so it kind of helped me see with, my relationship with Christ, obviously, because I'm not technically his flesh, I guess, but I'm an adopted child of his, that he won't ever disown me, no
I guess
matter what
that's what I was just thinking, is like if he's made the decision to bring you in, that's his decision and it can't be changed. You can't change that.
Yeah, and to me, understanding that clears up a lot of the discrepancies between some of our denominations about once saved, always saved. If the adoption is dependent on me, which a child doesn't go seeking to be adopted. I mean, they want to be adopted, but they're not legally able to do the paperwork and do the things necessary to become an adopted child of an adult family. It's not about me doing it. It's about my Father adopting me, and he's holding on to me, and there's nothing that's going to cause that to be undone. If I had to live in the fear of every time I messed up or sinned, made a mistake, beyond having to go and sacrifice a cow and all those things, if I had the risk of him kicking me out, I can't imagine living in that fear. I know that even if I've messed up, even if I've gotten way off track, if I'm his adopted child, which I am, he's always going to bring me back in. He's always going to pull me up in his lap. And he may scold me, and he may make me walk through the consequences of what I've done, but he's not going to tell me I'm not welcome anymore.
No, and
That's
I think
huge.
you need to be secure in that.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Seems like a lot of people over the years since I've been churching, seems like there are a good number of people get kind of caught up in the weeds about this whole elect, adopted, chosen, all that business. But I kind of think that just confuses a lot of people, and they don't step back and think. To me, it's just like your salvation. I've come to understand I didn't really have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
He did that. And if he did that, how in the world could I take that away from him? I can't.
Yeah.
Like you said, I can screw up and pay the consequences, get scolded. But isn't it fascinating that he's always right there to accept you?
Yeah.
It's like you can't change that, and you shouldn't be able to change that. And I never liked it that people were confused about. I think some folks just get wrapped up in these words, these words, the elect, the chosen, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think our world operates on we earn things.
Yeah.
And he doesn't operate that way. And so it's hard for us to even wrap our minds around it. I have to have done something to earn it, and then if you did, then that means you can do something to lose it.
Yep.
If you go at it that way. And
I guess we'll always kind of think that way, though.
Yeah.
Because we can't totally understand.
But we don't operate that way, but that's how he operates. And I think we just need to
and you think
cling
about,
to that.
Probably what happens in most of our minds is that we're told about this position. Oh, I'm an adopted child of God. I have a position in God's family. But I know me, and I know my performance in this family is not always good. So therefore we think, I bet he'd do like somebody like on an NFL team. If I don't hit all my numbers, he might trade me to somebody else. He thought a lot of me on the front end, but we do that in a lot of our relationships. We do that. We see a lot of people in marriage that do that. Well, you don't do everything I thought you'd do, and you're causing me trouble. So I'm gonna trade you off. I'm gonna get a different one. We trade jobs. Americans trade jobs like almost like underwear. Sometimes we take a new job for 50 cents more an hour, and so we assume that God's going to treat us that way. And while we should have security, we also don't need to take that for granted. That, what, we need to live up to what He's called us to be, because number one, He deserves honor and glory. And man, look what you've been given. If you had somebody come to you and say, Mr. Jackson, I'm going to give you $1 million, and all you got to do is every morning I want you to go out here and I want you to go out here and just wash your car. That's all you got to do every day for the rest of your life. Well, you'd kill yourself to go out there and wash that car every day, because you'd be like, I want to make sure I keep this $1 million. And so there is this balance within us that we're trying to live up to what God wants us to do, but at the same time realize these words, adoption, election, predestined, they're really for our sanity. How insane. A buddy of mine used to be a member of our church. He was very good, and I mean this in a nice way, at arguing. I mean, he just was. He was very knowledgeable of the Bible, but good at what we call apologetics, arguing his position. And he had a friend that was from another belief, and he was like, so you mean to tell me that if I have a sin in my life that I forgot to ask for forgiveness for, or I died before I got to ask for forgiveness, that I could go to hell? And he goes, oh yeah. He said, so I could have done everything right in my life, and on my way to work today saw a woman jogging by in a skimpy outfit, and I turned to look at her and thought some things that I shouldn't think, and ran off the road and hit a tree and died, that I'm going to hell? He's like, man, where's there any peace in all that? And there's a reality to this, is that to be a child of God, to be adopted by God, is to say, you know what? He's got me even when I don't have Him. Yeah. And I think if you don't have that, you'll worry yourself to death.
Yeah, you'll never be at peace.
Yeah.
I don't see how you could be.
If you really believe that.
Yep.
No.
If you really believe that. So Paul's book to the Galatians is a good reminder that it's not about works. Works accompanies your salvation. It doesn't accomplish your salvation.
Do you think that years ago I got to wondering, I'm saved. I know I am. Could I just go off the hill and sit on the hill at my creek for the rest of my life and still be saved?
Yeah, you could, but I think you'd be being a disobedient child.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Just testing you out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that we have to realize is that, you know what God knows about us? God knows my heart. God also knows my mental state. Hope none of y'all experience this, but I've seen people in my family that have lost their mind.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same person they used to be
right.
when they're in the nursing home and they have some issues. And, if I were to evaluate their life in that moment, I might have looked at you and said, I'm not too sure that person knows who God is. But that's not all of their life.
Mm-hmm.
God knows the bigger picture, and He also knows whatever that they were dealing with in that moment of time.
Right.
So this thing of adoption is important. It is such a big deal that the Old Testament foreshadowed this was what was going to happen.
Okay, so I always like to try to circle around here at some point to the people who accidentally stumble upon all this, and now what they've just heard is a lot of talk about these words, adoption, et cetera, all those boring things that, if you just visit a church, you don't go much where you tune out. But why would somebody want to tune in about what we're talking about right here? I think I know the answer to my question, but I'd like to hear somebody else besides me say it.
Well, it's understanding that God has a design and a desire for our life to being connected with His life. He desires to be with us.
That's what I'm looking for.
Adoption is important because adoption says that the greater one in the covenant has come to the lesser one in the covenant and chose you. And God comes to choose to be in a relationship with us. Doesn't have to be, but He wants to be. And our response to that is just to surrender to that. Again, it's not about working your way into the family. If you're sitting out there going, I'm not good enough to go to heaven, you're exactly right. You're not good enough. But God's good enough to get you to heaven. You might say, I'm not smart enough. You're exactly right. But God's smart enough to get you to heaven. You might say, but you just don't know what all I've done. No, but God knows what you've done, and he loves you anyway. And he knows what his son has done to pay for those sins. So again, back to the Old Testament, all of that led up to the ultimate sacrifice that Christ was going to make. Why? Because God wanted to be in relationship with us.
And it comes back to that he is the one doing the adopting.
Absolutely.
So
I'm not saying to brag about this, and some people get mad, but I've never gone to a pound to adopt a dog. You want to know why? Because I didn't want to. And that's okay. If you want to, that's great.
Yep.
But you have to want to. You don't find yourself accidentally adopting a dog. You do it on purpose. And so God's done this stuff on purpose. It's not by accident that Jesus came to die for our sins. It's not by accident that you're listening to this podcast. It's not by accident that you're having these thoughts. You're doing all that because God's reaching out to you on purpose because he loves you.
Mm-hmm. Enough said.
Yeah.
So if he's doing that, y'all just say okay.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Take care of it. I mean, you can take care of that like right now. You can take care of that. And if you wondered if you should, and you've been waiting, the good news is you can take care of that just right now. Take care of it. Be done with that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good talk. Seemed like the plane might have landed.
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
Let's take a break. Come back, play Inny or Outty.
Hey everybody, it's time to play America's almost favoriteest new game show, Inny or Outty, where we challenge our guests to figure out if a phrase we give them is actually in the Bible or out of the Bible. Sharpen your wits, guest. You're about to be in the hot seat of Bible stuff, because you're the next contestant on Inny or Outty. Here's Mike.
Today on Inny or Outty, same thing as always. But it's going to be fun because it's always fun. Just the conversations are a lot of fun. I just think the conversations are great. Sometime I'd like for us to do this with some kids.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Wouldn't it be fun to hear their conversations and, make them have a conversation about why they think? I think that would be fun. We'll have to try that. Okay, we will. So today, I'll be on the power seat. In the power seat. Thank you.
In or on.
For one of them, and then HD will be in the power seat for the other one.
Run to the outhouse by Willie Make It on the power seat.
Okay, let's just go right to it. What do you say?
Let's go.
Do it.
We have an Inny or Outty from a listener.
That's awesome.
We have a listener?
One of our 3 listeners.
I'm not going to mention names because I don't know if you're supposed to do that without getting clearance.
True.
Crystal Connolly, if I did not get clearance from Crystal, I don't know if that would be appropriate.
Okay, yeah, better not say it's her.
I won't. But anyway, this Inny or Outty came from her. I'm changing it just a little to make it fit the format.
Okay.
And, this may or may not. I think she even said in her email she had just learned this from her reading. She said, I think she's been listening to me, because she gave herself an out right here. She said, maybe everyone knows this, but Paul was an ironsmith. Is that an Inny or an Outty? Paul, the great Paul, the Pharisee, was an ironsmith. That was his trade. That's what he did.
Paul was an ironsmith.
Yes. Paul. You remember Paul? You've read about Paul.
Peter did tents, right? Peter made tents? Somebody made tents.
Paul was a tent maker, wasn't he?
Somebody was a tent maker, so I thought maybe I had it.
Because
now somebody was a tent maker doesn't count because you have to kind of narrow it down. I was just calling you out there a little bit.
This is the way we perculate.
I know.
No,
I understand.
We're thinking.
Yeah.
I'm agitating while y'all are percolating. An ironsmith.
I know he cast out a demon of a girl who was with a silversmith.
I didn't know about that one.
Her master was a silversmith.
She was the fortune teller.
She was the fortune teller.
Made the money for him.
Yep. Yeah. That'd be a good Inny Outty.
Yes, I'm taking mental notes
Yeah.
as we.
Well, now you've blown it.
But an iron,
I could have used that next show.
like, so is it like a welder?
I don't think they had welding then.
An ironsmith.
No, they didn't have welding then.
Why is their last name Smith?
It's probably the guy that first started
Yeah.
working with
Black.
iron.
I mean, think about that. Blacksmith. Iron.
Blacksmith is actually the word.
Not
This is why when I was rewriting the question a little bit to fit, this is why something wasn't totally
Didn't feel just
comfortable with
right.
me, is because blacksmith was the word I was looking for. So, okay, let's start
Was
over.
Paul an iron or blacksmith?
Paul was a blacksmith. Okay.
I'm not saying he never did a blacksmith thing, but I know he made his money as a tent maker.
Yeah,
He was a tent maker, wasn't he?
that's what I thought.
All right.
That's what I was saying. Unless I'm confusing that was Peter.
We're gonna. I guess. Are you okay with this?
Yeah.
We're gonna go with. That's an Audi.
Audi.
Okay.
That he's an ironsmith or a blacksmith.
Okay.
We think he was a
Ironsmith.
tent maker.
Although I'm concerned because she
Yes.
said I just learned this.
Yeah, so that
Ah.
makes maybe
See?
wrong.
Ah.
Yeah.
Makes my gut.
So are you changing?
No.
We'll just go
I'll
with
just
it.
be wrong.
We'll be wrong strongly.
So if I say Paul was a blacksmith, you're saying that's an Audi.
That's an
We're
Audi.
gonna say Audi.
You're right. He was not. He was a tent maker.
Okay. Woo.
In Acts 18:2 and 3, he stayed with Priscilla and Aquila. Is that
Aquila.
his? Aquila?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because he was of the same trade. They were tent makers.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well,
Okay.
Good question.
yes.
That was good.
Yay.
Crystal Connolly, who we're not going to mention by name,
Wait.
but
No, don't tell her name.
and y'all got it right, which is another added benefit.
Way to confuse us with ironsmith.
Yeah,
Now
well,
it's up
I
to
knew.
me.
Like I said, I knew when I was writing that down.
It doesn't sound
Yeah,
right.
Ironsmith. That's but that's what it was.
But why were they smiths?
Well, we don't know that. Yeah.
We need to get to find that
They
out.
said
We'll
in
have
unison.
to get the Google later.
Get to the Google.
We'll ask the Google. Okay, HD,
Okay.
you are now in the power seat.
So these are part of a house.
Okay,
One of these is not
part
in
of
the
house.
Bible.
Oh, in the Bible. Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, in your
gotcha.
Outty, this is the way we play. In
Gotcha.
the Bible or out of the Bible.
Okay.
Okay. Sink, a bath, a stool, a chair, a stove. One of those
It's
is
not.
not in the Bible.
One of those is an Audi.
One of those is an Outty.
Well, Susan, the two that piqued my interest here were sink and stove.
Yeah, exactly. Me
Okay,
too.
so
the others, I'm thinking are there.
all right, so we're tracking right
We're
here
tracking on the same.
on those two.
But now when it says stove, I'm thinking stove is probably in there because they probably had like a, I don't know what you call it, an earthen stove, a clay stove. They wouldn't have a stove like we're thinking of a range.
Right, they'd have a
But
oven
I
in
think
the
it probably
in the
referred
wall.
to a stove somewhere. They cooked things. They had coals somewhere, hot coals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking stove was much more likely than sink.
Cook their matzo bread
Because
somehow.
I don't think they had a sink because I think
Running
they went
water.
down to they put the water down in the well in a bowl and probably washed things. I don't think they had a sink,
But they probably had a bowl in there somewhere that they kept water in, wouldn't you think?
but I don't think they would call it a sink.
It doesn't sound like a Bible
I
word,
don't
does
think
it?
so either.
Sink.
Stove, I could see. I'm not sure saying.
I'm even a little uncomfortable with stove because stove
Okay.
stove sounds a little like a more modern type word like sink.
You weren't using the message, were you?
This has been so long ago.
He doesn't know.
Okay, but
I got to do better notes.
so I'm with you. I'm thinking pizza oven when I think of a stove they would have had like in the wall
Right.
built in
That's
there.
what I'm thinking. Yeah. Yeah.
But sink, I don't see a.
Well, I don't even think they would have had a stove in their house because even when you go and tour houses like the Hermitage and stuff, they never had the fire where they cooked the food was never in the house.
It was out in
It
there,
probably still would have been out
away.
in a separate place. Yeah, I just don't think a sink. I think they had more of a bowl.
What's the list again?
Sink, bath, stool, chair, stove.
It's bath. Bath is an Audi. They would not have had that in their house.
But the word bath?
Mm-hmm.
They would have had the
Oh
word
yeah,
bath
yeah, the word
somewhere.
bath. Oh, you said the words.
The word.
What are the words again?
Sink.
Okay,
This has been this way all day.
it has been.
Sink, bath, stool, chair, stove.
Well, now I'm wondering, why does he have stool and chair?
Well, I just thought about stool.
Why does he have stool and chair?
In all the little books you read,
You know
from-
what? They didn't sit on chairs, though. They all sat on the floor. They didn't have chairs. They didn't sit on chairs. Right? They had a table, and they reclined around the table for the Lord's Supper.
Y'all have ruled out every word.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, you said one of them's not in. If we guess all of them,
If we say one of them is in, we think stool is in. I don't know. Okay.
stool seems kind of odd. I could see a chair,
I don't think they had chairs.
but if they had
Well,
chairs in those days, why would
I
they
bet
have
they
a
did
stool?
have a chair because they had a throne. Because Pharaoh had a
But wait,
throne.
I'm pretty sure there were no bars like you scoot up a stool to a bar.
No, I was thinking like a stool you stand on to reach something.
Oh, that's two
See, we're
different kinds
coming
of
from
stools.
different angles.
We are.
Milk stool.
I'm coming back down to sink.
You think sink is an
I
Outty?
think sink's an
I
Outty.
think I'm with you. I think sink is. I think that's correct.
Sink.
It took us a long time to get back to the very first one,
I've
but
forgotten where we are. Of all of these words, sink, bath, stool, chair, stove, stool is not in the Bible.
oh, we were so close right there at the end.
Close. We toyed with
We were
it.
close.
When you kept saying that, and I was laughing because one of our friends, who's no longer with us, he's in heaven, I came over to his house one day, and Mr. Earl said, I want to show you something.
Mr. Earl.
I said, okay, Mr. Earl, what you want to show me? He said, I want to show you my stool sample. And he
And
hands
with
me
old
a,
people, you never
hands me a
know.
little bottle.
No.
Hands me a little bottle. I want to show you my stool sample. He goes, go ahead, look at that. And I'm like, surely to
And you
goodness. Surely this is not what my brain was telling me. And I opened it up inside. There was a little bitty three-legged stool. And he just laughed
Earl.
and laughed and thought that was hilarious.
Earl, he was
Yeah,
a character.
yeah, he was.
Yes. I remember.
Well, I'm sorry, Michael. I steered you wrong.
No, well, I was going to fight you on it until you mentioned that there was another kind of a stool, a step stool, because
Yeah.
then I thought, well, that makes sense.
Where's sink in the Bible? I want you. We'll make him prove it in
Yeah.
the living room.
Okay.
Next time you show us where sink was.
Some guy was out in the desert and he didn't have enough drink and he sank down.
Okay, one win, one loss, but it's all in good fun.
there you go.
And there'll be retribution on the next episode,
Okay.
I'm sure. Okay, we'll come back and tell you bye here in a second.
Oh, wow. What a great contestant and a fine sport today on Inny or Outty, America's almost favorite new game show. Study up, future guest people. You're next in the hot seat for Inny or Outty.
If you're just listening to this or just watching it, you have no idea how long it took to get this one together because of everything that's going on. There's something in the air today or somewhere, and it's just been.
You probably, I mean, we hadn't had a buzz all day. In the air, something in the air. You should.
Oh
buzz
yeah, we
that.
have no
That
buzzer.
sounds- that
I
sounds
actually
churchy.
mentioned that earlier.
Buzzer's gone dead.
In the air, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That just sounds
That's
churchy.
too churchy right
Air
there.
sounds churchy.
Speaking of too churchy, we are not, and we're not on purpose on this program because we're just trying to talk.
That sounds right.
Well, I mean, it's deeper than that, but that's the basic concept here. Anyway, we're glad you stuck with us to listen to it anyway. So send us an email. That was nice to get an email from someone with a question. I've been wanting that for a while. So it's good to know. We've had
And
a
they
few
can see
now.
now they can be anonymous.
You can be totally
We'll tell you about
anonymous.
who it is.
Oh, there's
You
a
can
lady
still bring
that.
snack food too.
Yes, there's a lady that keeps reminding me that she's bringing us something.
Oh, okay. You have to give her a heads up.
Yes, and I always forget. I just forget. So remind me.
Yes, because I
Sometime, but-
remember all kinds of things. Yeah.
Yep, we'll try that. But anyway, thanks for being with us, H.T. Jones, Susan Jones,
Yes, sir.
husband and wife team. I'm Mike the Baptist, and I think that's it. We'll see you next
We're
time.
just Christians.
We are just
Try not to
Christians.
cuss.
We what?
Trying not to cuss.
Try not to cuss. A previous guest got that wrong on one, which was hilarious
No, I've got it.
because it caught her off guard. She said, "Oh, sin!"
Yeah.
No.
Yep. She does watch it all the time.
She does. Okay, we're just Christians.
Trying not to cuss.
See you next time.
Mike the Baptist.